Hello, welcome again to Mozart Monday with me, Michael Collins. Today I'm going to talk about the third movement of Mozart's Clarinet Concerto, and quite a lot of things to say about it, I suppose. It's certainly technically the most challenging of all three movements, and with this particular theme, the opening theme, which happens so many times, this Rondo theme, it's a really difficult theme to get absolutely right, to pinpoint the exact, the right articulation, the right tempo, and the right character. It never ceases to amaze in a performance. You think before you start playing, and just even to catch the with the upbeat, to catch the downbeat with the orchestra and move together, so we're harmonious in approach, is one of the most challenging things I know. And to get the right articulation between the clarinet and also with the bow strokes in the violins is very difficult. Ideally, it would be great to have many hours, let's say, of really sorting out these small details. Maybe one day that can happen. It would be a wonderful thing for me to achieve. But we have to sort of sort this out in a very short space of time, and it's always this third movement which is the most problematic. Partly is the very first bar, and I'll play my first two bars and then explain why. So the orchestra will catch me on the downbeat, but they don't play the repeated three quavers. They only have the 1 and 3, so they have da-da-lum bum bum, da-da-lum bum bum, and I have da-da-lum bum bum bum, dum bum bum. So there's always this feeling that we never quite catch. Doesn't matter who it is, which orchestra. It's just it's just a process, I suppose. The clarinet being a single instrument in all of this, that we have this forward thinking, and orchestras maybe will always be slightly late to the articulation and the way that I'm playing. So I always have to feel that I'm feeling one thing, but I must do another. So, and that is that I want to feel that I want to move forward or move the phrase forward, and I've always got to hold it back, otherwise I'm going to be in front of the orchestra. So that's right at the very beginning of the movement, and it is this that will really set the tone for the whole finale. One other aspect that's really tricky in this movement is keeping it going. It sounds strange, but it's got to have a real dance-like quality. It's in 6/8, so that means 2 main beats in the bar: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we've got to have these bigger beats. The 1, 2, 1, 2. They should always have this forward feel about them. Otherwise, the music gets stuck, and it can get slower and heavier, and just generally sort of lacking in this dance quality that we're looking for all the time. So these are the most challenging aspects of the last movement, and if we can achieve these, then I think we really are doing well, I suppose, in the grand scheme of things, to get a half decent performance. As I said earlier, technically this is the most challenging, and especially again on this basset clarinet, it really is a challenge. There's a lot of fast passage work, and like the first movement, I demonstrated the difference between the basset clarinet version and the normal A clarinet version. This is really pronounced in the last movement. I'll just give a little example. On the basset clarinet, And then on the normal clarinet, it would be like this. So as you can hear, the phrase is broken up into these sort of broken arpeggios. And on the basset version, you can go right the way down to the bottom. Which I think is amazing. It really shows off this instrument in its full glory. And there are many moments in this movement when we can use this to our advantage. And it's our moment, if you like, of, I hate using the word, but let's use it anyway, of showing off. After all, it's a concerto, and a concerto is supposed to demonstrate the ability of the soloist. And hopefully, we've just shown our complete musicianship with the first two movements, particularly the stunning second movement. So we can let our hair down a little in this last movement and perhaps have some fun and show off a little. So, as I said, there are many moments when we can really show off. I suppose, as I said in previous talks, the difficulty is knowing when to put certain passages down an octave, because the only surviving manuscript of these first 150 or so bars, it's clear with Mozart's intentions which passages should go down an octave. So we have to use our judgment in the other two movements as to which passages should go down the octave. Thank goodness, just because the way it's written, the last movement, it's pretty clear which passages should go down, and it is almost too easy to put so much of it down an octave that it becomes a bit of a thing. So here we are, I'm playing the basset clarinet, we can play down in this octave. So one has to be really careful of balancing of using the full range of the clarinet rather than just the basset part of the instrument, because we can lose direction, we can lose line, because quite often the clarinet is down in the same register as the bassoon and the cellos. So we have to be incredibly careful. Here's an example in the sort of development of the last movement, when we can put it down the octave, but we are grovelling a lot with the lower part of the orchestra, and it can get lost and soaked up with the orchestra. So we've got to be extremely careful. Clarinet. For example. So this last movement, there is probably not too much to say about it. I think I've covered most of the aspects. Dance, to keep it danced in, keep it alive in two, is extremely important. And even this you can often be in two minds about, because he marks it allegro, and allegro meaning lively. It doesn't mean fast. So quite often we hear it taken at a breakneck speed, and this now falls under the category of virtuosic, showing off, concerto style playing. And quite often in a performance it can go that way, just from sheer excitement of the moment. Obviously in a recording you listen back to, oh my goodness, that is too fast, and then you have to slam on the brakes a bit and come back down to earth and have a reality check. It is allegro, not presto, and so number one, the lightness, dance-like quality is important. Number two is using the tongue, the articulation. I suppose if we were to go back in time, certainly to my predecessors before, listening to their recordings, quite often they treated this work in a more legato way. That's mean that they don't really articulate a lot of the passage work. They played legato. And this happens quite a lot in more historic performances. My personal feeling, and there's no right or wrong about this, of course, and I suppose I grew up with the more historical performances that were going on around my time of as a student and so on, and that was to articulate the faster passages, so they speak more, so they have more character. And for me, this wins over the more legato approach, and keeps the movement alive and keeps it moving. And for me, this wins, I'm afraid. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me, but after many years and many performances of this piece, I've come to the conclusion that the more articulation, the better, because it really does speak in such a way in these large concert halls around the world, and then the audience can understand much easier your intentions, your musical intentions, the conversation, if you like, and also in respect to the orchestra, because you're not going to get violins playing a lot of legato things all the time, because they like to bow, and that's their articulation, that's their version of our tonguing, so with the bowing. So it's really important that when we go into a performance, rehearsals for a performance, that we sort these moments out so they're very clear, that we're all on the same page, and that we end up with a performance that has some uniform qualities about it, rather than just, oh, here's the soloist doing one thing and the orchestra will do something else. For me, that's a disaster, and I suppose I've been down that path many times when there's lack of actual rehearsal time. And that's why I said at the beginning of this talk, it's really important that we have enough time to sort out these moments. They may seem trivial and very small, but in the grand scheme of it, they all add up to what I think is the ultimate performance, and something that the music, the concerto itself, deserves. After all, maybe it's a very bold statement, but I think we're so lucky to have one of the greatest works written by Mozart, and happens to be for the clarinet, basset clarinet. We are extremely fortunate, so we should treat it with the respect and understanding and dedication that it deserves. So there we are. My thoughts, some wishes, some good, some bad, all about the Mozart Clarinet Concerto, and a piece that will never cease to amaze me, and hopefully you, the listener, and we'll always find something new in the piece, and that's up to the performer to bring something new in every performance, and I think that is possible to do so. After many years of playing the piece, I'm always finding new things, hopefully, to say that come across in the performance, and to always think that, music, any piece, but particularly I find with this piece, there's such a strong, it creates such a conversation. That's the business of articulation, I suppose, using our tongue when we speak. It's an expression, and it's the same making music. It's all so important to the final product. And thank you for listening to my thoughts about the concerto, and as I said at the very beginning of the talk, it's always been such a pleasure working with the London Mozart players, because their understanding of this style of music is really one of the best that I know, and we always seem to be on the same page. And when I said we need hours to rehearse, I'm fortunate enough when I work with the London Mozart players that we seem to be on, as I say, from the word go, on the same page, so we don't have to say very much, maybe just to clear up one or two passages of articulation, but it's just there because we're all listening. And after all, to me, I think a concerto is just a larger form of chamber music and should be treated this way rather than soloist and orchestra. We're all part of this performance together, and that ultimately will give the most satisfying performance. you.